It's Peter Mead, and welcome to the Australian Search Marketing Academy. Today is the SEO Predictions for 2021. Here with my co-host, Nick Ranger.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey. And so today, we've got a lot to get through. We've got a lot of guests today. And I just wanted to very quickly, first, before anything, I just wanted to give a very special mention for Bill Slawski, who is doing it tough right now, and just a mention for him to say get well soon. And I'm sure everyone in the industry feels the same about what Bill has done for us all. And so, but now predictions for 2021. What I'm going to do is go through, introduce each guest, and starting with my co-host, and we're going to give just a very quick introduction to what do they think their prediction is. Then later on, we're going to deep dive into those predictions. So first of all, Nick Ranger, SEO specialist at Studio Hawk. How are you, Nick? What's going on? And what is your top level prediction?
Hey,
/S?
hey, it's great to be here. I know everyone's talking about their thoughts for 2021, and it's a really great way to sort of consider where we've been and what we're going to be doing for the new year. So, I think just taking stock of like how this has impacted the economy that always has like some ripple effects across like SEO and PPC and just general digital marketing. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of major disruptions in the market for next year. I'm not an economist. I wouldn't classify myself an expert, but like I think we can all appreciate that as a lot of different business owners have taken a hit, we're probably going to see a lot of people opening up new disruptive businesses and just trying to like really take that. So I think SEO is going to be more competitive than ever. So that's one. I think also evolution of indexation. There's been a lot of really, really interesting things that's happening that's come out, like especially with passage indexing, which is really, really interesting. And Google's BERT also going from like 10% to nearly all of queries. And of course, my own personal thinking around like Google's Discover and the rise in personalized knowledge graphs and EAT will become even more prolific. So I won't take up too much time, but that's just my own thoughts.
That sounds like something I really want to hear more about. So we'll deep dive into that in the next round. We're going to go round table. And so Jason Munn, Group Chief Search Officer at Overdose.
How's it going?
And a fellow Melbourneite, and of course, big in the community. Spent a lot of time with doing SEO over the years. And Jason, what a weird year this year's been. What is your crystal ball moments for 2021?
Well, I've got the first breaking news. SEO will not be dead in 2021. That's for sure. Right, the fact that we have all these powerhouses on this webinar just proves the case. So that's my first prediction. SEO is going nowhere. My second prediction is Shopify will improve as a platform. So I think COVID has done well. COVID is bad, but it has forced, I guess, a lot of businesses to go online, to start thinking about digital a little bit more, taking it more seriously. So we saw the significant increase in the number of Shopify stores in the last quarter, last 6 months, last 8 months as well. And with the recent hires of all these SEO powerhouses in the States, I think the platform will improve from an SEO perspective. I think it will start to rival some of the more SEO-friendly platforms out there. So I think look out for Q1, Q2 of next year and start seeing some additional features being introduced. The next prediction, which I think most of us will have, is that speed and usability and user experience of websites will become a stronger ranking factor next year. We all know that CLS and Core Web Vitals will become part of the ranking factor in May. I think tracking will become a massive chore moving forward. We're already seeing this as a challenge in Europe and certain parts of the States, where you have to declare your cookies and stuff like that. So I think tracking will become challenging, especially with iOS 14 kicking in as well. And the last thing I have is accessibility is going to be very, very important in 2021. So making sure your website is accessible to people with disability, and the way you build your websites and the way you code your websites is going to be so important moving forward.
I'm really looking forward to you explaining that a lot more on the next round once we go around a bit more. But so on to James Norquay. James Norquay is SEO director at Prosperity Media. And of course, James is from Sydney and is seeing things a little bit differently to what we've seen them in Melbourne. But I'd just like to hear, James, just at a top level, because we're going to come back to you and you can dive in deep into your predictions. But at a top level, what do you think? Maybe a few items that you think we're going to be experiencing from Google in 2021?
Yeah, so I did this a bit differently, Peter. I asked some people in our team here in Sydney, what do you think are some predictions? So I'll just read a few shortened versions of each prediction that some people in our team had. So we had Nick Dyer, who's technical SEO here. He said, focus on linkable assets. Guest post farms are going to be devalued by Google. Google will be busy fixing the indexation issues and server resource issues in 2021. We had Dejan Mladinovsky, who said Google will pay a lot more attention to technical optimization in 2021. Daniel K. Chung, he said, focus on getting the basics of SEO right before you get onto the more technical stuff. 100% agree with that. You don't want to be thinking about CLS before you have your H1 tags fixed, things like that. So basics, get the basics right. We had Matt Keats, who said, Google will continue to focus on serving hyper-local results, giving the individual user a more personalized experience. And my prediction, I think Google's going to focus more on user experience. I think I've seen it a lot in the affiliate niches, websites that are heavy on ads and have poor UX, poor menu structures. They've been hit recently in the Google updates, whereas sites that have a clean experience, they've done quite well. That's pretty much a few predictions from the team.
Great. Looking forward to drilling into that a bit more. So Dan Petrovic, Dejan, is director at Dejan Marketing, and Dan, what do you at a top level? What's your kind of sneak peek at what you're going to be explaining to us later on? What do you think?
I have a little Google Keep list of a bunch of bullet points in no particular order of importance. But I'd like to put a special highlight on our last year's episode where we discussed our predictions. I actually reviewed it this morning, and I'd like to highlight one prediction that did come true. It was oddly specific, as Nick pointed it out in the video. I said something, and Nick, you were like, that's very specific. So I'd like to challenge us all to make one oddly specific prediction in this webinar and see if it comes true. It's always fun to do these things. Just to give one quick rundown. Web stories will die. Web vitals will broaden. Less misambiguation, more confidence. Post-COVID behavioral changes. Fact check stronger factor. Google will be in difficult spot as a decider of facts versus fiction. Granular ranking with passage ranking. Rise of very long tail, more SERP feature experiments, rise of testing culture. Donald Trump starts a search engine, trumpsearch.com. NLP rise. Oddly specific. New job, language programmer for NLP. Year of diversification, especially for Australia. We've got all sorts of issues with our trading partners, import, export. Time to broaden, look at being neighbor, especially with e-commerce, and things that matter to our future generations, the climate change, energy. And something that we need to probably discuss is also the media bargaining code. Google's been wrestling against ACCC and the Australian media authorities.
Wow. Yes. There's a lot there.
Yeah. That's a whole shipping container because there's a lot to unpack.
We have a lot to unpack. Yeah. I mean, I think just for throw my hat in the ring is I think the the branded search is not going away. It's going to get stronger. Zero click results, and the way that Google's obviously going to keep introducing more SERP features, but this will also force Google, I guess, to give better results. If they're giving zero-click results, then they need to make sure the results they are giving are actually accurate or a bit more accurate. Well, I'd hope they want to. So I'm predicting, this is my kind of strange prediction, is that they will start to try to give better results for those zero-click results.
Yeah.
I'd hope. Maybe that's just me wishful thinking. But so, oh wow, let's go around. Nick Ranger, 5 minutes. You want to unpack some of your predictions? Okay,
so just taking stock of what I said before, I think major disruptions in the market. If 2020 is anything to sort of go by, and we sort of mentioned it before, it's going to be a very different market for SEO. I think it's going to be even more competitive than it was this year, if that's possible. I think everyone has realized how important that having just digital visibility is. And so, I don't think I want to go too much into that, but otherwise, I think that's going to be even more so. So, while there's I think all SERP features offers the allure of greater SERP real estate, it could go similar to that, where we're going to see a lot more visibility with maybe even some different predictive search features, which is going to my next point of an evolution of indexation, where I think there's going to be a lot more visibility with passage indexing. And just basically, passage indexing, I think Google Discovery is going to evolve in its sense. Sorry, I'm just really conscious of time. But Google is, rolling out passage indexing, which we saw earlier this year, and they're not really part of this part of this main thing where it's it doesn't index the pages separately. The company expects that this will probably be applied to maybe 7% of all search queries, I think, across different languages. So we saw there was a couple of us that had a discussion about this, where Google BERT is going from 10% to maybe to 100% of all the queries. So for people that don't really know what that is, it's like an NLP based way of pre-training how search intent is being able to be seen from. So I think that this wider application will hopefully improve Google's understanding of content, and particularly with search intent. So again, content is even more, important as ever. I also think that there will be a rise in SERP personalization, so personalized knowledge graphs. There's been a lot of different thoughts and theories about this. I think Google knows a lot about how people search. So I've seen it where just toggling between incognito and just just more browser searching, where we're typing in a query and it will basically change as per like Google's understanding of like how you're searching and what you're wanting to look for. So Google has so much information about you, your search history, your emails, social media, and other different types of user information, and that means like I think like this kind of like scaling up of like personalized search what really looks like to happen. And I think that a lot of different things will be influenced by that. So again, like just going back to like maybe even something like like how we visually search. I think things like where like different like text, voice, and sort of like that vision of different like media elements. I think that's going to become even more prolific, and especially as we've seen on mobile, a lot of that the SERP there is video carousels, like lots of images, like a lot of different like SERP features that is just really evolving. So I think again structured data is going to become even more important. Like I've been loving talking about structured data of late, but I think just really making sure that like a nice wide variety, and making sure that it's being implemented across all of your different clients, like particularly in e-commerce. There's so many great opportunities to be able to do that. So I think that that's going to become even more prolific. I think just going back to Google Discovery, sorry, I didn't write these down. I'm just kind of like trying to like organize my thoughts here. But going back to like just predictive search features with Google Discover, I think how that's going to be seen more if you're looking in Search Console. You might have seen like this Google Discover. I think this is going to be occurring more and more, where Google is looking at opportunities just to be able to like have certain content be displayed in different ways. So if you will see it, I think that's going to be increasing a lot more, but you will see a massive spike in impressions that go when they're being featured in Google Discover. So I think it's kind of like looking at like this like almost like queryless search, like understanding of like the individual like replaces this ability to be able to understand that this singular query, and it becomes like the central focus of Discover. So I think it's when it's looking like the search history, it's looking at the browser history, it may be even looking at like your location, like dependent on it's maybe your privacy settings, and also some the different apps that you use. But like Google Discover, it is using your information to identify and understand like what is essentially your interests.
Wow, that's a lot.
Trying to condense as much information as possible into a short amount of time.
I know, because there's so much it's so big and so much. I feel like so much really has happened in 2020, and so much more is going to happen. I mean, as everybody starts converging more and more online, has been more and more essential. The dreaded C word, which I won't mention, but which is really changing user behavior and driving it online. Well, I very briefly heard you mention voice search. Is that I mean, the old voice search prediction, is that just, I mean, it's part of things.
It's not really. I mean, I've kind of been a little bit vocal about voice search. Like, I don't think that it's there to be utilized as prolific. It's more of like taking a step back and thinking like, okay, well, what is like almost like how we search as like more of like a sensory kind of like experience, where it's like looking at text, voice, and like different media elements. So this is kind of like where like a lot of people are talking about like visual search and a lot of different machine learning to be able to understand what are the kinds of interests that people are looking at, like what can we be able to serve the user that will give them a better qualified information. So again, this is where I'm thinking that a lot of different like diversity of different media. I mean, we've seen this a lot with like listicles. We've seen this a lot of like with different images and videos and things like that. I think a lot of that goes back to Google just wanting to do this even more. So again, like how we can support this as SEOs is to look at content and just be like, how can we make this better? How can we make this more dynamic? How can we serve this in a way that is both visually like interesting and appealing, that gives better qualified information a lot faster to people, and in different ways. Like there's different ways to be able to express an opinion. You can have an image that will like be like an infographic. You can have a video that will explain it, to take advantage of passive listeners, and just people like on the trams like wanting to like read through content. So again, like thinking about like having that as part of your content strategies will be really, really important, and having structured data to be able to support this as well. Just basically just taking up more real estate in the SERP.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty well-rounded approach. I'm interested actually. Thanks for sharing all that, and thanks for bouncing all that stuff off each other as we do quite often. But so Jason, I'm really interested because the Shopify, the rise of Shopify, I guess we've seen it, really sort of launch forward in 2020. People rushing to get online, and the whole thing surged originally with this sort of curbside delivery idea. Originally, when the whole lockdown kicked in, and everyone was, just rushing to get a shop up. I've seen people even who just want to start a blog website and they decide to use Shopify. I mean, it doesn't sound right to me, but if you want to use
Shopify, the wrong move.
But look, I'll hand it over to you because I'm really interested in how you think that's going to go, and plus anything else you want to add.
Yeah, so Shopify is definitely makes it easy for someone who wants to sell something, whether it's a physical product or a service online really, really quickly. Like the go-to market, if you want to go to market in one day, that's doable. 100% is doable. They make it also seamless from the time you sign up, chuck in your credit card, all the payment gateway integrations and stuff like that. Everything's all done for you. It's literally an out-of-box solution that, it's suitable for businesses of all sizes, right? So, traditionally, everyone knows SEO, from an SEO perspective, Shopify has its drawbacks and its SEO quirks. The CEO said, you know what, we're doing all right, we're making money, our shareholders are happy, so screw you guys. But then, that tone changed about 12 months ago. Someone tweeted directly to the CEO. I can't remember who it was. And then the CEO goes, yeah, keen to hear, tell me more. And then a flood of SEOs just tweeted at Toby and give him a lot of recommendations and pointed out all the different SEO quirks that the website, that the platform does not have. And then about 3 months ago, we started seeing Shopify hiring in-house SEOs coming in, all these big names. Like the most recent one was Kevin Indig. Shout out to Kevin. So he's now going to be leading up the SEO function, director of SEO. I don't know what his role will be, whether it's going to be forward-facing or for the platform. But I sincerely hope that with all these, acquisitions of SEO talent in-house, that the platform is going to be more flexible from an SEO perspective. Would it be that so restrictive? And we will see. I sincerely hope that the platform is going to improve and it's going to make it more SEO friendly. It makes sense. They've got such a big market share. They definitely do not want to lose out to Magento, definitely do not want to lose out to WooCommerce. So it only makes sense for them to evolve. And hopefully we'll see some good things from that.
Do you mind if I just tack on a little thought to that? They are, I think, beta testing subdirectories for international SEO. That was a massive point that was also made in that. I think I also jumped onto like that Twitter feed, and I think they're actually doing some beta testing with that. So exciting stuff.
Yeah.
In addition to like a couple of things with like their sitemap and their robots.txt as well. So really exciting stuff.
Well, it is exciting. It's good to see such a big platform where we all have to, as SEOs, we have to work with Shopify whether we like it or not. So it's great to see the features getting improved, make it easier to us to do our job. But we also mentioned this idea about tracking, and I mean, it's one of the things we all have to do as SEOs. Otherwise, we're not doing SEO if we don't track it and report on the traffic. What's going to happen there, Jason?
So it's not happening in Australia as yet, but when you work with clients who are based in Europe and certain states in United States, you do have to, sometimes we have that pop up, you have to agree upon accepting the cookies before you get tracked and stuff like that. So I think my prediction is that Australia will adapt some of that in the future, and that would mean that tracking of confidential, I guess, activities and customer information will be a little bit more challenging moving forward. And then also with the recent rise of Apple sticking it to Facebook, I think at some point Apple will be sticking it to Google as well, right? And it's going to make tracking of user behavior on their devices a little bit more challenging for everyone else. So yeah.
Wow. Yes, we'll wait and see what happens there. But yeah, I totally agree. That's not the status quo is getting challenged, and we can see that happening. Yeah, as you said about Facebook, that whole landscape's changing. And James, I'd really love to hear what some of you listed a bunch of things from the team, but you also had your own personal one there. What do you want to deep dive into for us?
I think the first important one is things like link acquisition. Like a lot of people are still making a lot of mistakes around that. I see a lot of agencies taking people for a ride. I think the thing is like a lot of links that people are like selling to clients, they're links that are devalued, so they're on guest post farms, they've got no traffic, they're low authority. You go to the site, it's full of paid posts. Clients being told by agencies that this stuff is working, but I feel Google has devalued it this year and even more so next year. I feel like this type of activity is going to be devalued further. So that is one point. I mean, I think the thing is with link acquisition, it's going to get a lot harder in 2021. You get like agencies and client side, you're going to have to invest in digital PR, building out assets, content assets. You're really going to have to invest the time in correct outreach to stand out from the crowd. Like people talk about like the shotgun skyscraper method that was big by the authority hacker guys. That type of stuff isn't as effective as in today's market as it was 5 years ago. I think a lot of webmasters are very aware of that type of stuff. I think, you're just going to have to invest a lot more into building out content assets that stand out from the crowd, doing surveys, getting some unique data in the market for your clients. I mean, any like age-old strategies like statistic assets are still working. Like that's been working for like 10 years. Like you're just going to have to build things that stand out. I mean, and then you're going to have to reach out to the right people that have quality websites and just look into the site. Does the site actually have traffic? Does it have authority? What's the percentage of paid versus informational content on the site? Things like that,
What about, just quickly ask you, what about the authority of the author?
Yeah, I mean, like authority of the author is also important. Like just like if you build up a good author profile and you've got trust, you're going to be able to get a lot of media placements and things like that. If you're someone who has a bit of a following, if you're doing Harrow outreach and you're reaching out to people and you already list that you were featured on news.com.au and a few other authoritative sources, that's the type of stuff that's going to stand out to a journalist rather than just being a random individual. You've got to be a subject matter expert. I mean, some of the clients that we work with are doctors. And when you do Harrow outreach on behalf of the doctor and you get the doctor to provide the pitches, like you're going to be hitting a lot of placements, because if you're a subject matter expert, it's a lot easier to get links. If you're a fake profile, it's going to be a lot harder. A lot of agencies are just, they're not stepping up the game in terms of these type of stuff. And that's why they're just getting the mediocre placements.
Do you think it's getting easier for people to detect these kind of low quality links? I mean, Majestic has just brought out some features to help you to find your second tier, third tier, whatever, network of links. What do you think about that, James?
I think
spider tree.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, maybe under 5% of the market knows what is a good and bad link. I think over 95% of people have no clue. They're relying on the agency for transparency. Agency will get a link on a guest post farm and tell the client, it's the best thing ever. It's a DR80. It's got 100 traffic. It's a rebirthed expired domain, and like the client doesn't know any better. Like, I think a lot of people are just like telling people whatever. They're just selling SEO. There's so many agencies like that in the Australian market. It's quite frustrating. But yeah.
Okay. Right. So, that sounds like something that we've been saying for a lot of years in SEO, James. But I mean, obviously, Google has come out and said, do not do guest posting, and of course, as SEOs, that's where a lot of the bread and butter is, right? So what can we do? What's the best approach now for 2021?
I think the best approach is, like, you're just going to have to do things that are going to stand out, like put together some survey data, build a content asset, just do things that stand out. Like, I mean, that's hard to say for a small business because they've got no budget. And then, like, that's why people target them and say, we'll get you like 1 or 2 guest posts a month. But if you're a mid to enterprise level business, you should definitely be investing in content assets, building tools, things like that. That's what's gonna be effective in 2021, 100%. Like, I think you're seeing a big swing towards this in the UK market this year. I know there's like every agency is offering digital PR now. Everyone's building content assets. The thing is, it's working a lot of the time. The clients that we work with in the US that are investing in this type of activity, they're seeing very positive results. So I think, I think that's going to be a big area in 2021. I think, you got to double down on this type of activity.
Oh, watch this space. Yeah, I mean, obviously, backlink stuff is always controversial in SEO, but
it is.
It's I think that people who have been doing it for quite a while can see the difference. So, Dan,
Something else.
apart from, go ahead, Nick, just quickly. Yeah.
Sorry. I just want to reiterate a point that you made, James, like where you're looking at the subject matter expert again, like is making sure that this is also niche relevant. I mean, absolutely make things that stand out and that are really going to capture, to be the difference. Because I think that, again, as SEO is going to become even more competitive next year, so will link outreach. And I think a lot of people will get a lot more inquiries, a lot more things, flooding into their inbox, and people trying to essentially, like host, content on other people's sites to be able to like have their links point back to theirs. Again, like making sure that is niche relevant I reckon is going to be even more important to be able to make sure that it's focusing that attention.
Exactly. Just one quickly, Peter. Some people are asking questions. People want to know what a content asset is. So a content asset is something like the top 50 keto-friendly foods, and then you build out like a long-form article with custom graphics, or it could be like mobile phone statistics in 2021 and things like that. That is an example of a content asset, And in regards to building tools can be anything. It could be like a calculator, for example, like home loan calculator for under 30-year-olds, things like that. Building out custom tools. That's pretty much a quick definition.
Yeah, great. I often think of content asset or linkable assets. I mean, think about it really logically from a point of view of what are the kinds of things that people are going to naturally want to link to. Are they really going to want? What are all these links pointing to your crappy services page on your website? Who's going to do that, right? So, but if you've got good quality content or tools or anything on your site that's link worthy, that's what I would say. But Dan, we've talked about this before about links, and in fact, you gave us a great webinar going right into all the whole details of how to build this kind of content and how to get the links to it. But I mean, is this really the top level thing that you would be thinking of, or have you got? You mentioned a whole bunch of things earlier. What do you want to drill into and give us some more info?
It was a nice sort of segue, so I'll just follow the current onward. So you guys may remember I built my agency on link building. It's our roots. It's where we started, and I've done link building myself by hand, and I know how exhausting link building can be. So it's nice that we want to provide good quality content for the clients, and it's nice to provide those real earned links. But for us as businesses, it hardly makes any commercial sense to do such things unless we charge really, really big money for it. To create a solid, 10x page, you could spend $10,000. Content, influencer import, outreach, 10 grand per page. Okay, try sell that to a client. I mean, we could arguably, lower it down to say like $2K per page, good quality content and some solid, organic links. But is that going to do something? And I think you nailed it, Peter, with your statement. You said the crappy services page. That echoes, that sentence echoes. And I think because it shouldn't be the case. You should have a fantastic services page. You'd have a fantastic products page. One thing where I ultimately disagree with what most of the industry is doing is building stuff so people can link to. I'm interested in building links towards e-commerce product page. If I'm selling Reebok shoes, I want people to link to that page. Now that's the art that a good SEO needs to crack. How do we get organic links from editorial content? How do we make that page a linkable asset with data and all the interesting things? And why am I bringing this up? Because it links us back to one of the original points that I made in my little 5-minute intro, and that is the passage ranking changes.
Yeah.
So traditionally, Google follows links and flows page rank throughout URLs, and it considers the content of the entire page when ranking certain things. So now with passage indexing, Google's talking to me again. It happened in our last webinar. So we have an interesting opportunity now, because the context of the entire page no longer matters. If you have a very specific, valuable piece of content that's relevant to users' query on a page that's otherwise authoritative, that will rank better now as of these changes than it would before in the past. Why? Because it disregards all the other less related content and sort of watering it down in its relevance status. So authority building is still important, but we have now a chance to integrate linkable assets into our most important pages. And if I may speculate a little bit, use of Fraggles might actually assist with that. We've got Chrome upgraded now. We've got new URL standard where we can send people directly to a piece of content that we want. So, if you were a search engine and if you found a link on somebody's blog that points using the very specific text reference in a certain page, that would count almost like as a sublink. Link towards that page authority, but also link and a sign of endorsement for that particular paragraph of text. So I think it would be interesting to see agencies in the new year steer away from building assets for the sake of building assets and attracting links to them, but instead trying to crack the code of how do we get the links to the pages that we actually want to have links, or the crappy service pages, as you put it, Peter. I think that would be very, very interesting to see.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the bleeding edge that you're working on there.
Trial and error.
That's the pointy end, isn't it?
The problem with this tactic is I've been trying it for 2 years now. The problem is that traditionally we use named anchors to jump to a specific point. The problem is CRO. So you have your desire to rank, and you need this massive high quality. You want them just to funnel through and buy the product or sign up for a service or whatever you're trying to sell. And then you've got all these shiny things flying around, distracting from the conversion. So when Google said that they would treat hidden content on mobile index differently to desktop and index and rank everything as if it was visible, that kind of gave me hope that some of this linkable asset data on money pages could be tucked away behind accordions and tabs and things like that. But as some of you may remember, some of my experiments in the past few years have not been as consistent with Google's claims that it does. I mean, it does rank and it get indexed. It's just not the same as if it was visible on the page.
Correct. I did that test as well, Dan. After you did your experiment, I tried it for some of our clients who were rebuilding and redesigning their websites. And I just gave them the recommendation, yeah, no problem. Google says it's okay to hide content behind accordions. And as soon as we launched a new design, we just saw rankings going downwards. And we're like, what the hell? Everything is the same. The only difference was we embedded things behind accordions and tabs. And that was our issue. We reverted it back and boom, rankings came back. So I think moral of the story is test it for your own clients. Don't take everything you hear for gospel. And I also want to reiterate your point on building links to your money pages, your product pages. It's difficult. How are you going to convince the client to go, hey, take away from your traditional PDP, image here, there, and then reviews at the bottom. Let's add more content to it. Let's enrich it. It's very hard to sell that in without showing them proof that it's going to work. Everything's experimental. And I think kudos to the guys at IKEA. They do this every now and then, right? Where they integrate their products with like the hottest TV shows. Like they had a package for I think it was, what was it? Lord of the Rings or something like that. And then Uniqlo did the same, where they had a package to look like Mark Zuckerberg, where he's all plain clothes and hoodies and stuff like that. Sometimes coming up with those kind of ideas requires multiple parties and stakeholders to realize. And I agree, it's a total challenge. It's very hard to convince someone to do so.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. But of course, link building is a lot of work. Proper link building is a lot of work. But James, what do you think about the links directly to money pages?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with what Dan's saying. Like, you don't want to build assets or anything, like, if you don't have a good, like, product page to begin with. I mean, back to Jason's point as well, like, there was an e-commerce site in the UK market that got a comedian to do all their product descriptions. And they spent like thousands and thousands of dollars doing these product descriptions that a comedian wrote, but that in turn led to a lot of natural links coming into the direct product pages. So yeah, Dan's right. Like if you want to stand out as an SEO, you've got to be creative and you've got to get links straight into the product page in a natural sense. So 100% agree. And yeah, like I think the thing is you want to try to tie in the content asset into the page when you can. And I mean, back to Jason's point about testing, as an agency, we run 4 of our own affiliate properties. So anytime we want to test something, we test it on the affiliate sites first before we roll it out to client websites. I think that is something that a lot of agencies don't even do. They don't have their own properties to test things on. You've got to be testing as an SEO. It's so crucial.
And I think just to and add another idea to that is just, SEO is about like really making sure that it is user friendly, that it is focused on the actual customer, the user. So I think a lot of these changes Google's trying to employ, so that we're considering that a lot more than we're thinking about different bots like crawling the pages, just from a ranking and a content kind of like aspect.
Yeah. We've got a couple of questions here. I'll throw the first one over to Dan. It's from Ryan McConville. McConville? I hope I've pronounced that properly. Any tips for B2B? I find Google makes it very hard to supersede review sites and high-paying AdWords customers. Of course, we know the AdWords is always the big one, which can take the top slots and bump us out of the organic positions. But yeah, Dan, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, I've had this problem many times, and there's very little you can do with the things that you cannot control on Google. If an algorithm decides, okay, for this query deserves a lot of review sites, or we're going to put a wall of ads in front of everything, and they just put all these shiny, distracting things that people like to click on, like knowledge graph and maps and whatnot. You have to work with that and diversify your organic traffic through not just long tail traffic, very long tail traffic, and very, very long tail traffic, because you can never predict what somebody will type in to find you. And if you're wondering, I think we discussed this at one point in some webinar with Semrush, but I'll sort of repeat the process. Once I was out of ideas for my keyword research. I exhausted all the tools and Google Trends, and I've gone through everything, and I still couldn't quite crack it. So what I did, I actually asked people what they would type in. This was a Google survey. I asked people, what would you type in if you were looking for this and that? The amount of answers that were completely outside of my original thinking, my nucleus of keyword research, was staggering. Just asking people. I mean, it's not exactly a new thing. It's called market research. Like we've been doing it for many decades. But we tend not to do it in our industry. So when you're really stuck with sticky SERP features and Google really going against you, you have to rethink your strategy and broaden the keywords that will bring people to you.
It's great point, isn't it? The search volume. The volume doesn't mean the same thing it used to mean.
I mean, there are still some consultants and providers of organic search optimization that focus on 10 keywords or gold, silver, bronze, and they give you 100 keywords. It's like any limit on keywords is arbitrary, because people will just innovate and find new ways to type things in. There was a statistic about Google's daily queries that have never been typed in before, and I can't remember the exact percent, but it was huge. It's just really surprising. So that's just one example of how you can bypass the problem you're stuck on. By thinking, exploding that initial keyword research into something you never anticipated, especially if you get stuck in your own business jargon, things that you talk about internally in the office, and instead of what your potential customer might be looking for. In fact, it might not even be like, say, boss sends their assistant to do their research for them to find a supplier for a certain service. That assistant will use completely different language to what boss would do if they were using Google. So you have to consider all those types of things and find an opening. This is not easy, but it's one of the ways to bypass when Google's being stubborn with all their sort of features and reluctance to rank you.
Okay, so SEO prediction for 2021 is if you do your keyword research in your market research thoroughly and properly, then you'll have better results. Is that fair to say, Dan?
Broader results. You'll bring things that you never considered. So you'll bring extra traffic that just wasn't viable before. Yeah.
I got a question. I'm going to throw this one over to James. It's from Vision Property and Finance. Would personalizing a page and its content around locality be a good way to find a niche for a business? The example is Newcastle mortgage brokering. So what about something like top 5 reasons to invest in Newcastle? What do you think of this line of questioning, James? Is this going to be worthwhile pursuing in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is, that just sounds like supporting content for a main keyword, you know. Like the easiest thing you can do is look at what is already ranking for these keywords and build something that's better. I mean, you can use tools like Surfer SEO. They got a content editor that's pretty good. Yeah, definitely make use of tools like that. Yeah, I mean, like I've seen a lot of those type of mortgage brokers that do articles like best 10 suburbs in Newcastle for property investors and things like that, and they do like they do content around like that type of stuff, like investment ideas for under 700,000 in Newcastle, highest like whatever in percentage increase for investors. Yeah, supporting content for your main money page, it can definitely work. Like yeah, you just got to do some, as Dan said, do some keyword research, think outside the square, potentially do some surveys. Yeah, like look on forums, like auto suggest. There's so many things you can do. Look at what people are asking on Reddit. Yeah, you can put Reddit into Semrush and see what comes back for Newcastle related queries related to finance. There's a lot of stuff you can do.
Yeah, okay. So it's a good way to keep working. So it's definitely worth pursuing that. Earlier on in the webinar, there was a mention about the Google's indexing. We know that there's been sort of up and down indexing stuff, and I want to talk with you about this, Nick, because mostly because you and I have been working on a lot of this stuff to do with crawling, rendering, JavaScript, server side, client side, pre-render, and then what the rendered results and how they get indexed, and sort of if they get indexed, and how that affects their SEO, and then convincing developers to even care or even understand. I really feel like, to me, this is because so many people are sort of rushing into the maybe Shopify or even other e-commerce platforms, and they're putting lots of JavaScript stuff into it, and lots of it's not making it into the index. How should we approach this, Nick?
Well, I think, you look like things getting into the index, you kind of have to take a step back. We're seeing things that, it's having Google can still crawl these pages that I think, are looking like server-side rendering issues. So just to break it down, what do we mean by this? So there's like client-side rendering, and then there's server-side rendering. So like client-side rendering is like when you're looking at websites that are built in different JavaScript frameworks. Lots of common ones like React is rendered in the browser rather than on the actual website's server. So, you know, if you follow like, you know, wonderful people like Martin Split, for example, like, you know, he sort of, I think he was sort of saying like, you know, if you're using JavaScript frameworks, like generally the default is client-side rendering. So it's essentially like saying like, you know, the bare bones of the HTML, and then over a piece of the JavaScript, and the JavaScript actually fetches and assembles the content in the browser. So, you know, there's a lot of downsides that happen when we look at sites that are looking like this. So client-side rendering, I think there's like, you know, two main downsides. So, you know, the first one is sort of like looking at like a poor user experience. So JavaScript can essentially like add seconds of load time, and you know, as we've seen from you know, from what you were saying, Jason, like you know, core web vitals and just like, you know, site speed in general are going to be weighted a lot more heavily in 2021. So, you know, when we're looking at this sort of thing, you know, if you've got sites that have been, you know, built in these wonderful, you know, JavaScript frameworks, you know, this is a bit of an issue. So, you know, the burden is fully on the actual, you know, clients, like, you know, for like website visitors and things like that. The second big downside of client-side rendering is like its effect on search engines. So, you know, the bots that actually crawl them. So, for example, like Google has like multiple waves of different indexing. In that process, they crawl and they index the HTML of a page like in the first wave and come back to render the JavaScript when the resources become available. So that's like the second wave. Like that kind of like, you know, two wave kind of approach, like JavaScript content might actually be missed and not included in Google's index, which is, you know, coming back to like the partial indexing, you know, that I was saying before. So a lot of sites, I think, again, work with a lot of people who just be like, oh, we'll do site migrations. Like, we want to really capture the market and, you know, be, you know, learn from 2020. Like, so in 2021, we'll have like these new beautiful websites. And so like, I think I've tweeted a lot about this and doing a lot of different site migrations at the moment, and a lot scheduled in 2021 as well. So, you know, for a lot of these, I've had to like really explain in detail, like, you know, what server-side rendering is. So, you know, what is that? Like when I say like server-side rendering, and this is just a good one to be aware of. JavaScript rendered on the server's website, you know, both search engine bots and humans, they get a fastest page experience, better UX, and, you know, eliminates, you know, speed-related crawl budget issues. So, you know, making sure that this like all the content is like either rewritten natively in the HTML, or if that can't be done with the different CMS and the different, you know, add-ons and things, you know, sometimes they can kind of like interfere with each other, then you might have to look at some kind of like pre-rendering solution as well. So trying to make sure that this is communicated really, really well in the website planning at the very start of the process is going to be really important. And a lot of site owners need to be aware that devs just do not know this at all. So they're thinking like, oh, you know, build the you know, beautiful, the shiny thing to like, you know, have everyone come and be able to see this wonderful dynamic, you know, looking website. Again, we really need to make sure of this, because server-side rendering, as an alternative, it can be really expensive and really resource intensive. So you know, this is just something to be really aware of as well.
This is I feel like this is definitely not going away in 2021. I feel like it's ramping up, and definitely something that we're all going to need to be involved in. But look, we're getting towards the end of the webinar, so I just would love to go around again one more time for each of our fantastic SEO professionals, top of their game, best SEOs. What's your big takeaway? You know, what should people take away if they just did one thing? Jason, what do you think?
Back to basics is my recommendation in 2021. So don't over-invest on your platform. Don't over-invest on functionality. Put it back to basics. Make sure your website is, you know, W3C compliant. I think if you aim towards that, everything else will look after itself.
Terrific. Yeah, I love that one. back to basics. I mean, especially, like Google's still ramping up this whole idea of AMP, accelerated mobile pages, and pushing out because they just want things to run fast on mobile. So, I mean, that's very basic. So definitely we need to take some hints from that. James, what's your big takeaway that people can just that they really should not overlook in 2021?
I think Jason's right. Like getting the basics right on the website. I think user experience too. Like if your site is filled with ads above the fold, and users are going to have trouble finding the menus and things like that. It's basic stuff. Like if you don't have that right, you're going to see a drop back in rankings. I know WebMD, I think it was, got hit pretty hard after the last Google update, where we're seeing sites like Healthline totally crush it continuously. I think what you can really do as a digital marketer / SEO, you really want to study these websites that are doing well, because these companies are investing millions into SEO every year. So you got to learn from the best. If you wanna work out what you should be doing, look at who is the best website in an international market for your industry and get some ideas from what they're doing and bring that back to the Australian market. So many people don't do that. That's one thing I always do, is I always look in the US and the UK and see who's doing well and what ideas we can take from their sites, bring it back to the Australian market, roll it out here. It's been working for 15 years doing that strategy.
Great. Well, I'd like to just throw a little into the ring, which is the Core Web Vitals is coming, and it's probably a little bit of an indicator of just the whole bigger picture about performance in general. And this whole thing of pushing mobile devices and what devices are other kinds of things that we're going to be browsing and using the internet on. So how are we going to interact with search engines and that kind of thing? But it's definitely, if your site is fast, you will definitely see the benefits, even to do with all that stuff like client-side rendering and things like that. If your site's fast, you usually don't have too many problems. But Dan, what's your big takeaway for us? What should people really not overlook in 2021?
It's really hard to decide from the massive list of things that I've got. I suppose with focus on practicality, something that you could really, really do is elevating the quality of your product and services page is probably one of the key things. This is not specific to the next year. So I feel like we're betraying the original, prediction. This is something that has always been the case and should always remain the case, but it remains stronger with the upcoming changes. Now, if you combine the really, truly scaling up content is easy if you have a 10-page website. If you have an e-commerce website, how are you going to scale 1,000 pages or 10,000 pages? So our last year's webinar where we did predictions, I predicted that NLG would become more accessible to us mortals, not big corporates. So the prices have come down. There are a lot more platforms that go beyond the 2 or 3 big ones. So NLG is now natural language generation is now available to everyone for cheap. And this is something that you really need to get into now if you have a website with a lot of need for developing good content. So you look at your data, assets, structure, any information you have, even your analytics for products, price changes, things like that, and start weaving sentences out of that. So my prediction is that soon we'll start seeing a profession or a sub-profession or a skill set within an existing profession that will be a language programmer. So a person that will sit down, it's a content writer, a copywriter that's skilled up to be able to program language logic and create not articles, but create footprints and algorithms for articles at scale. So I'll just wrap it up at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's right out there, and let's see. I'm glad you're taking the risk of putting such a bold prediction out there.
Oh, by the way, Peter, the prediction that came true, and I made it last year, was I said in this very webinar that Google will make a transcript, and when we search for stuff, we'll be able to jump straight to the point where I say this.
Oh, and did you say it was going to be yellow?
No. In the video, so there will be a video result, and it'll jump straight to that video point.
Oh, the video one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing it for the feature snippets and the videos, and yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nick Ranger, we need to wrap it up. Thanks everyone, but Nick, thanks for co-hosting. And do you have just a very quick final thought for us?
Very quick. Yeah, definitely. So, let's do this in threes. Daft Punk said, harder, better, faster. What is SEO? It's backlinks, it's technical SEO, and it's content. Content, really, really quickly. If just with the keywords that you want to go for every one of your pages, just Google it and see whether it actually matches your search intent. Lots of people forget about that. Google tells you exactly who they consider to be, the best, results for that keyword. Have a look at what's appearing. I know I've said a lot of really fancy different, different SERP features and visual search and predictive search features, discover, etc. But at the end of the day, use that as your measure to say, what you need to do for to optimize your pages. Technical SEO, make sure it's, again, Daft Punk kind of logic, harder, better, faster. You really want to make sure that it is, is running as fast and as optimal. They're with as little to inhibit search engines from being able to crawl and to index your pages. And for backlinks, again, authority is becoming even more important. As you mentioned, Peter, with brand search becoming more, from what I said a little bit about just different search personalization, and from what even James said with people of different authorities being the subject matter experts. So use that as your base principle to just have a base logic going forward with SEO in 2021. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thanks for co-hosting. Jason, thank you very much for joining us. Jason Munn, SEO extraordinaire. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Yeah, James, and love your work. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your take on things, and wish you all the best in 2021. And so thank you very much. And Dan, a pleasure as always, and love your predictions. They're all out there, and we'll definitely be checking again to see how we go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah. And happy holidays.
And a happy 2021 for everyone. Yeah. And Nick Ranger, again, thank you, and thanks for hosting. And we'll look forward to all of us working together in the future.
100%. And thank you, Peter, for hosting.
Great.
Have a wonderful time, everyone. All right. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you later.